Wednesday, April the 13th, 2022. And I want to welcome you to the Wednesday edition of Shortcuts for Your Soul. I have with me the energy of the being that called themselves Babaji, and they wanted to discuss the mind that you are not. The mind that you are not. And his energy is very slow compared to what my mind operates at. One of the very first things he said to me is it's important you eliminate distractions from your mind. This is the greatest overcoming for any individual, to be able to liberate themselves from the distractions of your mind. This is very important. You may be under the misunderstanding that your thoughts are something that you cannot get rid of. That is not entirely true. While thoughts are certainly very abundant, you do not have to participate in them if you understand the nature of your awareness. It is from the perspective of awareness that you can begin at least the process of eliminating this mental distraction that you may have different names for, your thoughts or the personality. Whatever you decide to label it as, it is simply a distraction from who you are. You do have the authority and the ability to stop your thought, to put a pause in its place where you are no longer distracted. It is useful to have them when they are necessary. However, ultimately, when you come to the understanding of who you are, then you will discover that the only use for thought is for reasonable communication. It is not necessary beyond that, for in a state of who you are, there's a consistency in knowing that does not require your thinking mind as you understand it to be at this time. Now, your thought, of course, is connected to many things. It is connected to the sounds that you hear, the people that you think you know, the animals, the birds that you have labeled and given a thought form to, so that you do not even know what a bird really is, or what a dog really is, or a cloud really is, or a tree really is. You cannot know what something really is when you have thought in the way of what it is you are perceiving. The only place you will truly feel free is when you are thoughtless. That does not mean to be devoid of thought, that you do not have it, but it means that you are able to be divested of your attachment to that mechanism of thought as a means for understanding and comprehending what life is, whether it is the life within you or the life that you say is around you. But even these considerations are composed of thought that once again separate you from understanding the very nature of what it is even I am speaking of right now. So the process of beginning to remove yourself from this mental construct requires that you be aware that there is thought. Paradoxically, you have to be aware that there is thought in order to let it go. You have to be aware that there is a meaning attached to those thoughts before you can let that meaning go, before you can begin to reveal the essence of things, circumstances, and events to yourself as they are in the moment, and not as they are in your thought. You see, with thought, there is always an element of time. In the space of your being, there is not an element of time. That only exists when that construct is placed in between yourself and that which you are experiencing. When I offer you these words, please be prepared to surrender them. For it is not so much the words that have the value that you are seeking, but what is experienced as a state of being, a state of connectivity between what you are hearing and what you are experiencing, and there being no separation between the two. That place allows you to then know what a tree is without thinking of it as a tree, to know what a dog is without thinking of it as a dog, to know what a fish is without thinking of it as a fish. The moment you are able to regulate your mind into silence, then you can begin to know what you know. And even that has its drawbacks, because the moment you begin to believe that you know something, you now begin to formulate a thought about it. You begin to separate yourself from that which you are wishing to know. And in the knowing of a thing, there need not be one observer and one observed. There merely needs to be the connection, the knowing without the consideration of the knowing, the experience of the being experiencing the knowing, again, without seeking to try and figure out what it is you are experiencing, which is simply a function of separateness. This separateness occurred when you made the decision that you wanted to understand what you were understanding. The separation occurred when you began to seek to understand what you were understanding. Even though you already understood it by way of experience, you have sought to articulate the meaning of it, but the meaning of it is in the knowing of the experience, not in your interpretation of what it is you're knowing about the experience. The value in separating yourself from this world, the value in finding a place where there are no distractions, loans itself to giving you the opportunity to begin to make that discerning movement away from distraction into being. If you understand what I'm saying, then you can feel the deliciousness of the meaning without having to have an understanding for the experience of that meaning. But moving to a place where there is distractions in a fewer quantity, where there is less for you to try and think about the sound of the wind or the movement of the leaves, even these things, as blissful and as exquisite as they are in their own nature, experienced by you directly without interpretation, they are exquisitely beautiful. They are. The wind, the leaves, the trees, indeed, all things are exquisite when you are experiencing them as they are, without the interpretive element of your consciousness, your mind, your personality, your ego, your separateness in the way of yourself. In the place where there is the least amount of distraction is the most favorable opportunity to begin to relinquish your need to figure out or understand what you are observing. by the mere direct experience of it, you can learn more of a thing than you can from all of the sciences that study it. Even a planet or a star, if you could but allow yourself to experience your connection to that without there needing to be an identification of a connection, simply by being connected, then you can come to a much deeper and more profound relationship with your experience of being. When you are able to relieve yourself of the distractions of the environment, you then have to move into the place where your analysis of what it is you are seeking to experience must stop. The place where you learn to be undistracted even by your own thoughts, to become undistracted by your own thoughts. So you have two layers to liberate yourself from, two layers which ideally you will become reconnected with in a very different way when you understand exactly what it is you are experiencing. The distractions of the environment need to be minimized, and then the distractions in your mind likewise must also be minimized. Do not mislead yourself into believing that you cannot cease the process of thought. You can. You can easily cease the process of thought. And in that moment where your process of thought ceases and you are the active participant in the silence that ensues, and you merge into the silence without, again, the attempt to try and figure out or analyze or think about the experience, but to simply be in this unthoughtful place, the place where thoughts no longer distract you. And in that moment, you begin to wake up. You begin to wake up from distraction. You begin to become aware of what you are, not what you will be, not what you have been, but what you are. The governance of action, the governance of thought from this perspective of your being is significantly more fulfilling than you are experiencing yourself when distracted by thought or distracted by your thought of thoughts. In that place where you begin to be what you are, thought will be necessary only for communication to those that are under the illusion that you were formerly under when you were in the distracted place of thought. This construction of your personality that you believe yourself to exclusively be, this separate individual, has its form and function in a unified experience of being that you cannot fathom or understand, because the nature of thought is that it does tend to fragment and separate unless it is utilized in complete harmony with the subject that it is being applied to. That is simply to say that when you have a thought about a thing or a person or an event, the thought must represent or align to the nature of what that thing is more precisely. The word tree, for example, does not adequately, as a thought, represent what the tree is. It simply represents a thought about the tree. The tree as what it is as a thought in truth can only be discerned from the perspective of your immediate connection and relationship to it. That is, when there is you and the tree and nothing but you and the tree become as one, you experience each other as you are. From there, a more accurate understanding can be perceived. And that understanding, once it is perceived, does not even require a word in order for you to know what it is you are perceiving or experiencing. The advent of language was an attempt to elevate consciousness to a higher perspective of understanding, but it has simply resulted in elevating humanity to a greater degree of separation from the very thing that it seeks to find its fulfillment through. And that thing that you seek cannot be found through thought. It cannot be found by the acquisition of things. It exists in the direct being of your experience with where you are experiencing, wherever that is. The separateness of time-space applies to this as well. Time and space, again, are elements of separation that apply only for the sake of the mind's attempts to understand and comprehend a reality based in a need to survive that is no longer necessary. For your survival is not determined by your physical body. Your survival and existence are not determined by the number of thoughts and the amount of knowledge that you have. Your existence is determined by the level of awareness that you have of your being and how that being directly interacts with itself. How you are with a tree or a dog or a cat changes when there is no distraction of thought. And many of you acquire things in the hopes that you will get more than a fleeting moment of bliss. You acquire this new thing or that new thing or this pet, or you create this thing in hopes that you will eliminate the separation from yourself and yourself. But you get but a fleeting moment from the acquisition of things, a fleeting moment of unity, of unseparation from your experience. In hopes that you will end your separation, you acquire things to find a way to feel more complete. But again, the notion of thought, the notion of something other, keeps you divested of your experience of what you are. And so I came clearly to just articulate this simple understanding that the moment you move from the thinking distractions into the being of awareness, your understanding of what you call life, of other things, will change significantly. A relationship begins to become apparent to you as a sentient being. A relationship begins to become apparent to you as a sentient being between yourself and all else that is, that you would encounter through your experience of being. I challenge you to go out and sit with a tree and not think of it as a tree, but to simply be with that entity, to join with it, to not have a you and a they, simply to be in being with that which is. Your understanding of that object will change significantly when there is no longer you and the object, but simply your being in union with that which you are observing. Again, the challenge in language, which is thought, is that it can make it difficult to fully understand what is being communicated to you unless you experience it. But you can look at your body and you can say, oh, this is my body. And the very nature of the label, again, creates a level of separation between you and that thing that you experience as your body. And this realm of your mind, of this collage of thoughts, must be placed in a state of deep silence where you are not distracted by the interpretive reflex of your mind and your body, to remove all distractions from around you, and then to remove all distractions from within that place called your mind. And in that moment where you experience the inseparable nature of your consciousness with the things that your mind repeatedly tries to describe to you or tell you what it is or what it means, in that place of non-separation, you find your freedom. You find the thing that you are seeking, that it is with you in this moment. It is with you always to look upon everything and see it as not something separate from yourself. The nature of this experience can only be understood by way of your experience of it. And again, the language of you and it and of simply maintains the distraction of thought from the experience that I'm suggesting you might wish to pursue. That you sit before what you call a tree and do not think of it as a tree. Do not think of it as something else. Simply be with it. Bring yourself close to it. Bring your body close to it. Do not let your body tell you, oh, this is a tree. Do not let your mind tell you, oh, it is cool. Do not let your mind tell you anything about it. And just be with that which is with you. And in that moment where all interpretation, in that moment where all thought ceases, there is an experience that happens. And in that experience, you will come to understand the bliss of unity, that all things live not in separation, but in a great and profound unity. That your being is a profound unity of all things. That you are something and you are nothing at the same time. Many of you struggle in this time of space, in the separation of thought, in the pursuit of things, in the hope of acquiring something that you already possess, but hoping that something that distracts you will not distract you. But the things and the places and the sensations are distractions from the truth that you are seeking to be revealed, to live as an experience of your being. But do this. There is not one among you that cannot learn to quiet your thoughts. There is not one among you that cannot learn to quiet the body. There's not one among you that can not learn to still the action of distraction. Again, to hear without separateness, to hear a sound without a description of the sound, to simply experience the sound that you perceive and you as one and the same thing. To experience a color, a light, not as a color and a light, but that you and that are one and the same thing. To come to this place, you move to the understanding of what you really are, and then you get to smile in the delight of being that which you are, not any longer in the separation that thought and knowledge and body afford you. In this place of recognizing your unity with all things, that it does not require a description for you to know what it is to breathe, or to know what it is to see a sunset, to not describe what you see, but to simply be in the experience of that, is different. It is delightful. It is delicious. It is your freedom. When you begin to consider the reality that you can actually stop your mind from trying to tell you what everything is and just experience what is, you will find the delightful freedom that you always experience in your truest nature, but which your mind cannot afford to because of its process of separateness, of description. What you look around at and see in the space and time around you, again, your mind labels a thing as a lamp, as a table, as a glass, as a substance. There is a label, a description, and that is a distraction from what it actually is. The process of creation, the process of experiencing freedom can only occur when the distraction is no longer held in your consciousness. It is not who you are. These thoughts, those emotions, they are not who you are. They do not tell you the truth of the world. They give you ideas about an idea. They distract you further and further from what is true. And yet at the same time, you find ways of understanding more about what it is you are perceiving. In order to understand what you're perceiving, you create greater thought and greater distraction. You take things apart and you analyze them down to their finest, most minutest particle, always discovering that there are even smaller particles. You look to the greater things and you discover that these greater things have greater particles. You cannot find an end in sight to your insatiable desire to try and figure and understand things out. But you need only move into the state of experiencing what it is you are experiencing to fully understand what it is you are experiencing. But the moment the distraction of a label of hot or cold or good or bad or right or wrong, the moment the label comes into place, the separation begins, the distraction is now playing out. And in the distraction, you seek to eliminate your confusion, for the distraction does not accurately describe the experience. You cannot comprehend your experience from the distraction. And so now you feel the pain of that separation. When you say a tree is a tree, but you do not experience what it is, there is separation. And the separation means you will either explore it further or you will turn away in disappointment, for you do not know what it is. But that moment where you begin to experience without the label, what is the breath? To experience what a thing is, what it is you are observing or analyzing, to experience it is far greater a fulfillment than the endless and ever growing expansion of separation that occurs through this construct of mind, or some of you may call ego, that expansion simply leads to greater frustration, as you can see from the nature of the way civilization is continuing to evolve into greater confusion, greater uncertainty, because the thing you're seeking to understand cannot be understood simply by acquiring more knowledge, by simply analyzing it and weighing it more. It can only be understood in terms of your immediate experience of what it is. And from that place of an immediate experience of what a thing is, natural, spontaneous actions that do not function in the framework of separateness, where your actions are not functions of separation from that which you are experiencing. Your actions are congruent then with the requirements of what is needed, without having to have a definition of what is needed. You come to a knowing, an understanding. That is not to say that knowledge is bad. Knowledge can be very good if it is knowledge based in an understanding that is real. If it is knowledge based in an understanding that lacks information or awareness, then you will have confusion, and then you will have the endless pursuit of seeking to understand and comprehend endlessly. And that is the nature of the ego. That is the nature of the personality. That is the nature of what you call your mind, that it will endlessly pursue an understanding to acquire the fulfillment that is the nature of what you already are. I can say very little more on this, as again, all of these words are simply distractions, that the moment there is no thought, the moment you are experiencing the tree as not the label, the moment you are experiencing the dog as not the label, the moment you're experiencing the breath without the label, you come to a knowing of the truth of your being. Wow. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm quite speechless. Thank you so much, Babaji. I really appreciate that. I'm going to watch this over again. Good morning, Ruth. Good morning, Drusilla. Good morning, Heather. Hello. Hello. Hi, Kira. Hi, Mary. Hello, Marigold. Well, it's funny because he's saying if there are any questions, you might be wanting to consider that it is simply your mind trying to stay in control of its own distractions as it exists because of the distractions, whereas you do not need distractions in order to exist. Wow. Question from Nancy. When things come that I don't want, is this my guidance saying no? It is simply your mind creating what you do not want. You understand the experience of yourself as you are is significantly different than the process of trying to figure things out as you are doing now. You're trying to figure out, why is this happening? And it is happening. The very nature of aligning to the vibrational state you live in, the being that you are, again, to fully appreciate what I'm saying, you must move into a state where you are undistracted by these things, these events that separate you from yourself. Go to a place where you are undistracted. Release your thoughts your interpretations, your aspirations to try and comprehend or understand why this is happening, and simply let all of that go. Let all of that go and reside in the lotus of your being, in the center of your soul. In that place, undistracted, your flower will open. Your being will affect the relationships you have in this world with all things very differently than it does in your attempts to try and figure out why are things happening, or why are things not happening, or why should things happen. In that process of your mind, you keep yourself separate from the very thing that you are actually seeking to experience. But in the place where you go to align yourself to that place where you're undistracted by your mind's interpretive habits, where you are undistracted by the mind's attempts to understand or comprehend from its separate reality, in that moment where your mind falls silent, in that moment where you are undistracted, you will feel free. And that vibration of freedom, when you rest upon that and stay in that, again, the experience does not equal the word freedom, but it can be experienced as the word freedom, but it is not the word. But you may experience this in that place of the undistracted awareness that you can be. And there you'll come to know what you are, for you will be undistracted by body. You'll be undistracted by thought. And in that, you will experience who you are. I would add too that when there is no thought, there is no movement of emotion when you are able to release your thoughts. Not just the thoughts of the distractions of your senses, but the thoughts that swirl around habitually in your mind uncontrollably. When you release those and you restore yourself to the being that you are, which is independent of all of those distractions, then you will come to know the thing of which I speak, which is you. And again, even the word you will not fully articulate what you experience as that. Oh, thank you so much. Question from Vertical. To what degree is a stone conscious? He's saying most stones are significantly more aware of what they are. When you use the term how conscious it is, again, you are conscious of thought. You are conscious of memory. You are conscious of a future consideration about your life. But that does not let you be more aware. In fact, it tends to diminish your awareness when you are captured by a certain thought or idea. If you want to understand the nature of how conscious a rock is, simply remove the label and be with that. Not as something separate from you, but to be with that as you are with your breath. And you do not think much about your breath, but you are using it all the time. But when your body is breathing, how you experience the breath. Not how you think about the breath, about how much pressure is inflating or deflating your lungs, or how fast or how slow the breath is coming in. Again, those are separating components of thought, but to actually just experience You can do this also with a rock or a tree or another person or water or sky or light or animal. In that you will come to know what it is in terms of consciousness rather than have the question about it. You need the experience, and all your questions loan themselves to seeking to gain experience of what you are questioning, to come to a knowing. This is the nature of questions, to lead you back to knowing. But the knowing they lead you back to often is in separation, for you know one thing and it changes, and then you know another thing and it changes, and you know another thing and it changes, and you discover something else, and so on and so on. The mind takes you into that journey of separation. But to sit and be and know in being. Again, the interesting process of trying to articulate a truth for you to experience with language is almost a contradiction to the very purpose of what I'm describing, that you need to have no thought. You need to have no separateness between you and that which you wish to know in order to know it. To know what sunlight is, not to have the description of sunlight, but to know what it is, that you experience it a certain way. That is to know. That is to know. Great question. Question from Heather. Always distracted. Does this mean that I'm reaching higher ground? I have been aware since a young child. What still is this lesson? To ignore everyone and everything? It is not to ignore anything. It is quite the opposite, is to be present with it. Again, the very nature of your mind's desire to analyze and measure and weigh, while it has benefits in you being able to comprehend and restructure physical reality in order for your biology to be more comfortable, it does not loan itself to a greater understanding of what it is you are experiencing. As I had said earlier, to be undistracted, to be undistracted, to be out of the mind's desire to interpret and figure things out, to be in the experience of experience. You are asking if you should be separated. No. But let us assure you that you move into that place of being in alignment with what you are without distraction, then you will surely have no more distractions around you. You will have fewer and fewer distractions as you liberate that process of analysis and uncertainty from the mind's pursuit to know what you already have the ability to experience directly. Again, you may watch a sunset and have a thought about how beautiful it is, but the moment you have the thought about how beautiful it is, now the thought has placed itself between you and your experience of the thing that you're experiencing, and now your experience is diminished, and now you feel unfulfilled. And then you have to find another sunset, and hopefully that one will be more beautiful. But if you are in the moment of the sunset, you will never experience the same sunset twice, nor will you ever need to. Release the distractions from your mind. Go to a place where you are undistracted. You will discover that much of what you have in your life is unnecessary. The things, the people become not useless, but unnecessary for the fulfillment of your being. This is why so many find these private places, you call them ashrams, and monasteries, and even places like churches where people seek to get away from distraction, to get away from thought, to get away from the interpretive functions of the mind and the body, which live in separateness. Thank you, Heather. Question from Adam. Let's see where that question's hiding, Adam. There it is. Can I ask Babaji on to explain as thoughts as possible on how exactly is a thought form created methodologically on the mental plane in relation to the oversoul? He's laughing. He's saying you think too much. You are thinking too much. And your thinking so much drives you to yearn more for that which you are already in possession of. You think that the more you think, you will have more of what you are seeking to have more of, but that is the opposite. In your desire to try and figure all of these things out, you are simply creating greater separation, greater yearning for that which you already possess. As I had reiterated once already, again I shall do so, that you be mindful to liberate yourself from the pursuit of understanding that which you are seeking to understand. In your pursuit of it, you keep it separate, to simply be in alignment, to feel your experience of this that you seek to experience, and even then to drop the desire to pursue it, to acquire it, to hold it, to simply be in the experience of sunlight, without your mind saying, oh, this is warm, this is yellow, this has many colors, this is this way. To release yourself from that which seeks to understand and comprehend what you can experience directly and therefore know. And from a place of knowing, you have a deeper understanding of anything than your mind or your pursuit of knowledge could ever give you. To know a tree without the label, to know a breath without the label, is to know the truth of its existence and your relationship to that. And that relationship, again, shifts from being observer and observed to simply I am being with what I am being. And again, even the words that I use to describe the thing that I'm describing will further perpetuate the separation. And so I encourage you to go back to that place of simply being with your sunset as an experience, and not as a word, not as a description, simply being in the awareness of that. In there you will come to grasp the truth of your being, not simply to be trying to figure it out. There is nothing to figure out when you are being, for the state of being is very different than the process of figuring out. The insatiable need that humans have to acquire more stuff is based in the pain that is felt in the greater separateness that occurs as you acquire more and more and more and feel less and less fulfilled. You are simply increasing your suffering. Release your desire to seek to figure it out and simply experience the experience. It will not require words when you experience. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Great question. I got time for 2 more questions. Question from Jana. Can the experience of no thought given simply by grace, can the experience of no thought be simply given by grace? It is by your grace that it can be given. It is by your grace that you can be given that. The moment you articulate that, there will be no thought. The moment you release thought, the grace will be there in the liberation of yourself from the separation of thought. The grace is already there. It is not something to be found, it's something to be remembered the moment you have no thinking or pursuing or seeking. That does not mean that there will not be an impetus for action or an impetus for function from that grace, from your experience of what you are. There will be an impetus for action that will be an impetus for action that is for you in that individualized form. But that impetus for action will also be driven by your awareness of the interconnectivity of yourself with all things, and not from the perspective of your separation from all things. It is in that place of separateness from all things that errors begin to occur, that the yearning, the acquisition, the greed, all the things occur from separation, not from unity. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Jana. One more question from Rudy. Why does it seem people feed off an energy and give to what they want? May I please get a helpful message on this? Well, let us look at the question one more time. Why does it seem people feed off an energy and give to what they want? May I please get a helpful message on this? Again, the process of seeking, which is again something many of you do, you seek to understand, you seek to know, and this is not what will allow you to understand what you already understand. The place of acquiring knowledge and information is unnecessary when you are in a state of knowing, a state of being, a state of unity, a state of unseparateness. It is in that place where you are seeking to understand that you move into separation. The actions that will spring forth from knowing what you are being are very different than the actions that spring forth from your desire to try and comprehend or understand. Again, those modalities loan themselves to separation and not to greater unity. I return back to this, that you need to find a place where there is no distraction, where you can turn the process of thinking off. And there is not one among you that cannot learn to do this. It is your natural state, this unthinking state. It is your natural state to not need thought, to understand, to comprehend. In fact, great innovation and creation comes into this realm of humanity in the place where there is the least amount of thought, the least resistance to inspiration, to motivation, to creation from within. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Babaji. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Friday, April the 15th, we're going to have Pythagoras, and he's going to be discussing where new ideas come from, where they are born, the field, and he's totally put in brackets, the field of limitless possibilities. And that's going to be this Friday on Shortcuts for Your Soul. Again, I'm so grateful that you guys showed up today. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, share it out with others, click the notification bell so you know when we come live on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Also, if you want to open up your capacities to be a medium, to allow yourself to access information above and beyond what your finite mind knows, go to my website, williammichaelforbes.com, and check out our mediumship course program. We got courses ongoing throughout the summer. Please sign up for those if you want to learn to open up your mediumship capabilities, to open up your extra senses of clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, or even you want to learn the process of healing. Please take these courses. They're really amazing. We have some awesome speakers that come through this program. I want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you to my patrons for your support. That's another way you can support this channel, through Patreon, patreon.com. All the links are in the description box below any of my videos. I want to wish you all much love. Have yourselves a wonderful and joyful day, and I will see you on Friday as an edition of Shortcuts for Your Soul. Bye for now.